Hey, welcome to the Broken for Better podcast.
We're a nonprofit organization with the purpose of equipping your marriage and strengthening your family so that your tomorrow can be better than your today.
Enjoy the episode.
Thanks for joining the Broken for Better podcast. Tonight is super special to us. We are going to talk about balancing life through grief and loss. And we're going to get into our story a little bit. We have been blessed and are truly honored to have a dear couple with us, Andy and Deanna, that walked alongside of us through our darkest moments. The reality is, for our son Logan, Andy, boy, this happened quicker than I thought. Andy played a vital role in our son's life.
Yes.
And meant more than you'll ever know.
Yes.
But
as a mentor and a friend.
yeah,
I'll step in.
it was kind of a mentor and friend. That's right. You know?
Yeah.
And so it truly is an honor
Yes.
to have y'all here today. And tonight's going to be a little raw and real. Tears falling before I even realize it. They've jumped in to help navigate this moment.
Yes.
And kind of co-host with us. So why don't you let them know who you are while I get myself together right here? Why don't you give us a little insight into who you are?
Yes. Well, first off, thank y'all.
Yeah,
You
thank
guys
you.
are superheroes to both of us. And so having this conversation with you is an honor. It's a blessing. And so, yeah, I feel like we'll get into us, but I feel like we just got to say thank you to
Yeah.
who they are.
We just think you're the best. And I was like talking to Andy today, and I was going through all of our close friends' parents and realized none of our friends' parents have a podcast except you. So that makes you really cool.
And a good one, a good podcast
It's
too.
like that quote, like, you're not like the rest of the parents, you're the cool parents,
cool
you know?
100%.
Like, I was just like,
I don't know if our boys
Babe.
would agree with that, but
we can have them vote, like, if they think so. But I was just like, none of our friends have parents with a podcast. So
Yeah.
you guys are super cool.
You guys are amazing.
extremely blessed.
Yeah.
So for us, we are we're married a year and 3 days.
Oh, yeah.
Let's
A year and
go.
3 days. So we're professionals. We're going to be starting our marriage podcast
Yes.
soon.
No, we won't.
It's not all we've learned in 368 days.
Yeah. We'll just keep listening to yours.
Yeah, we're just going to rip every
Yeah.
episode.
And then when we're parents, we'll make one in honor of you all. Yeah.
We have a unique and also like textbook story.
Yeah.
So like the textbook part is we met in youth group. We went back and forth forever, and then I finally got my crap together and asked her out, and she was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And she was like,
After I told you that I was just like, we're just friends. I know we're kind of beating around the bush here,
"Yeah,
but we're done. Like,
And I
we're
was like-
friends, and let's be good at that.
yeah." I was like, "Wow, she knows what she wants. That's attractive." And like, kid you not, the next week I asked her out. I was
He
like,
drove to my house 3 days later. and
"Yeah."
was
3
like,
days later.
I want to take you on a date. And
Yep.
I was like, why? Like, we're friends. What are you doing?
You're like, yeah. So
Yeah.
we worked through a lot and got married. So best friends met when literally high school.
Yep. Teenagers.
We walked through so much life together, and so it's funny because we've been doing this a long time on the friend level,
Yeah.
but we've been doing the marriage thing for like what feels like just a couple minutes.
Which is way more fun.
Yes.
I hope so.
I agree.
Absolutely. So that's a bit of us. We love people. We love youth ministry. We love all ministry. We love church. We love doing stuff like this. So it's a huge honor.
Good stuff. Good
We love
stuff.
the shares.
We love the shares.
Well, thank you for
love
that.
too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's dive right in.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So we have some questions that we want to ask you guys. I know it's going to be a conversation.
Yeah.
I want to get started just about the topic of grief. Everybody grieves differently. And so no one person is the same, even if they're in the same family or the same relationship. Everyone will grieve differently. What are some tools? What are some game changers that y'all either together or individually found to be vital to your journey of grieving in a healthy way, grieving. I'm not going to say the right way because it feels like so many people kind of create this is the right way, this is the wrong way.
Yeah.
But what are some things that you'd go, hey, if you are experiencing grief or loss, or you're just now processing it, these were some key things for us that helped us immensely. What are those for y'all?
What's interesting for me is I don't think it's a question you're ever really ready to answer until you have to answer it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I do think that right way, wrong way question or, perspective has to be thrown out the window immediately. Because God created every single person so differently. And so bringing all of me into my scenario is all that I could give in that moment. Mm-hmm. And when you're faced with your greatest loss, you have to be fully able and to be transparent and vulnerable with exactly where you are. Mm-hmm. And so for us grieving differently, I think from a high perspective, mine was isolation, right? Mm-hmm. I wanted to isolate. I wanted to read. I wanted to yell at God. I wanted to fight for what I believed in and this faith that I was trying to redefine and this God that I thought I knew. But it was through isolation and it was through contemplation. And I couldn't, I had to work through that on my own, in my own way. Whereas
isolation for me
his response was
that was everything grew too loud.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't stand to be isolated.
Yeah.
I think the first part of it was interesting, and I had to, we've done marriage things for a long time, and we talk about selflessly giving yourself, dying to self for the betterment of your spouse. That's the true definition of marriage. One would die to self to live with the other. And now I had to learn it in her darkest, deepest, ugliest moment, being able to remove myself in a way like never before in the midst of my hurting, to love my wife in a way that I had never had to do it before. Mm-hmm. So at that point, we're 25 years married, literally just came off our huge 25th wedding anniversary.
Yeah.
Coming in and now having to learn, okay, how do I lay myself aside when I want to hurt and I need to hurt? But now, man, at this moment, I've got to be able to rally around my spouse because she can't get up off the couch. Mm-hmm. Like I've got to, and this isn't who I've known for 25 years. Right. So being able to pull a tool to really go, hey, I've got to, and we know marriages that have fallen apart because they both hurt at the same time. Neither could serve the other at that time. And so they just went separate ways. Mm-hmm. So for us, it was really learning this moment of going, wow, in your deepest, darkest, ugliest, I've got to remove myself. And then there's days within that I was in my deepest, darkest, struggling. And my spouse was able to lay herself aside to come alongside me and hold my arms up. So, I would say the first tool is just being really able to go, I've got to, as bad as I want to, I've got to humble myself, one, so that I can truly seek the Lord from a place of humility and hear from him in my deepest, darkest, but then also be able to hear from my spouse in a way that she needs me to hear me in that moment.
Right.
I think knowing too, like there's going to be waves, right? And so I remember specifically, I remember the day like it was yesterday. It was about 8 weeks after the accident that I remember feeling like I took my first deep breath today. Wow. And I remember it because I looked at the calendar like I just might live because that's how much I was hurting. And I thought I might make it. And that was about 8 weeks after the accident. But those first few weeks, now looking back, obviously you don't remember most of it. It's such a blur. All the things, because your brain just protects itself because God created it so beautifully. looking back, I can say that now. I would have never said that then, honestly.
Yeah.
So I'm putting that out there because that I would have never said that in those first few days. But um, we were so fortunate to have people that came in that were able to rally and hold our arms up, knowing that he had to grieve and I had to grieve, and we could not be capable in those first few moments of doing it on our own.
Yeah.
And so we had dear friends that came in and were it's like, I have her, you have him. Hold their arms up, keep holding their arms up. And
Yeah.
so not pushing back on saying, no, we've got this together, leave us alone. Like allowing people in that you trust was really, really big for us. Very
Yeah,
big
you
for
know, I
us.
think about grieving is one thing, and people, will just tell you, hey, kind of snap out. It's a sadness, it's an emotion. You can have control over that. But when I'm having to do things that you don't even think about. You're going and picking cemetery plots and headstones and doing funeral arrangements and all the things that you're like, you can't even think straight. And so having somebody that was for sure a secondary tool of ours. I mean, we had about two that literally stayed with us weeks and weeks,
Yeah.
but we had about 8 to 10 outside of family, of course, that just at any given moment for 8 or 9 weeks were here.
Yeah.
And what we now look back on, from that being 2 years ago, you look back on it and go, wow, that was truly a gift of God. That in our weakest, those 8 people dropped everything to hold our arms when we couldn't hold ourselves.
Yeah.
It just, you don't realize that. And so what it showed me, one of the biggest things that I've learned, and listen, hospitals and all that stuff, I was terrible at that stuff. Like, I remember on staff when I had to do hospital visits, I would sit in the parking lots and almost hyperventilate because I'm like, I don't want to go in there.
Well, you
And
have some of your own past trauma.
as
from
past
that.
trauma
Yeah,
from
yeah.
from hospitals. So it's kind of like, but now, because of what somebody did for me, I have found myself the last 2 years running head first into people's pain.
Yeah.
I'm not running from it. Man, I know what I needed. And so I'm going to get myself out of the way and I'm going to dive right into their pain no matter what it may cost me because somebody moved themselves out of the way to get into mine.
Yeah.
And that's a lifelong, that will forever be a lifelong thing for me, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, what would you say to people that are in the circle that say, I feel hesitant to bring up the person that they lost in conversation. I feel hesitant to go over because, it's almost sad the way people don't know how to navigate this subject that is a reality for every person at one point. What would you say to that person that's kind of hesitant about, do I jump in or do I not?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll be honest with you, Andy, like there have been guys that I've had to repent to because in their darkest moment, I pulled away, not knowing what to do. Or I prayed for you and I moved on.
Yeah.
And so I had to do some real repenting of that. Here's what I would say. I don't know that there's right words.
Yeah.
There's not anything anyone's going to tell me with the loss of a child that I'm like, oh, thanks. Now I feel better.
It's all better now.
Like you're not going to do that. So what did it best for me is I started encouraging people, listen, all I need to know is that you're thinking of me. So I have people right now, I'm 2 years removed, and I have people right now that I will get a random text once a month or every other month that says, hey, PK, I'm thinking about you. How can I best serve you today?
Yeah.
Because when someone's in their grief, that day, you ask me how you can serve me, that day I may need you to come over so I can cry on your shoulder.
Right.
Yeah.
Or I may need to get out of the house and go grab coffee.
Yeah.
Or I may not even need to see anybody. But the thought that you were thinking of someone willing to do whatever to serve them and that you put yourself out there enough to ask, That's literally what I do today when I text people. I don't know how to best love you right now, but I'll do anything. How do I best serve you?
And I think for me, I think it all depends on the approach of the offer. Like when it comes out of genuine humility, like, hey, how can I love you? Or how can I serve you? Or, hey, I've got something I wanted to share with you about your son. I don't know if you're in a good place to receive that today. That's very different than, hey, God said you need this. Because that can be a very hurtful moment, especially if you're working through your trust with God or you're working through a very angry season. And that's part of grieving. That's part of the process. And so I think when someone comes to you with humility saying, hey, man, I have an amazing memory about Logan. I want to share, but I don't know when the time is right. That puts the ball in my court to say, hey, I'd love to hear that
Yeah.
today. And because our significant others, right? Like our loved ones, our grief, our trauma, whatever that loss is, like that's something that's precious to us. And so when someone has a memory or a moment, of course, when we're in a healthy state of mind, we want to hear it. We want all the memories. We don't want them to be forgotten. We want to carry on legacy, all those things. But I think it's all so much more the intent of the question and how it's
Yeah,
presented.
I really, since you brought that up, babe, I can't really think of a time in the last 2 years that when someone's come and said, hey, I have a story that I'd like to share. I can't think of a time where we haven't listened.
No, there have been moments when someone has sent like a text or a picture or a video unexpected. Those can be hard because especially if you're in like a bad day and you just get a text or a video and you're like, I just miss him so much. That can be, but it's still beautiful. You still want it. But I think it's all just the heart behind being gracious enough to say, and like we said, we were not perfect and we've messed that up. I know we have. And so it's like, man, God gives us these new lenses, right? And he says, in the Beatitudes, what? Blessed are those who mourn, blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed. And it's like, those sound like curses, right? They don't sound like blessings. And yet he's saying, I'm giving you a glimpse of what I see. Blessed. You now see the hurting. You now see. And so it's like, I think when people respond to us that way, saying, I know you're hurting, so can I come tenderly with this? It's very different than a, hey, you need to feel better. It's a different dynamic and it makes you feel seen, but it also makes you feel loved even by the Father. Because I know how long-suffering God, or at least how I have felt the long-suffering God love me in those dark nights,
Yeah, and people that haven't really become accustomed to God is a good God through bad things, they're like, they don't get long suffering. It's like quick suffering and then next thing.
Right.
And I think you had something that we were talking about earlier, just about how it's important to not be afraid to ask. And even in our own life, you've been somebody that has really grown in just that specific area of, if I don't relate, that doesn't mean I won't engage in the conversation. I want you to share a little bit about that and what that's been like for you too.
Are you referring to what we were talking about when we were friends? When you lost your dad?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you lost your dad, I was there through the last couple of days in hospice. And, like bringing food, paying for things, just doing whatever you can in front of you is like the practical ways that I learned to help early on. But what I didn't know until we were dating was how our friend group had failed Andy and his siblings through that time, because we were willing to show up and take him out and go have fun. But none of us ever asked, how are you doing with the loss of your dad?
Yeah.
So, we're like in our 19, early 20s, just like, let's go to the mall. What do you want? I'll buy you something. Like that's the capacity in which I knew how to help. Yeah. Excuse me.
Which was huge. And you need those escapes still.
Yeah, but I think what I learned when we were dating, because I had asked, like, what do you remember from losing your dad when it came to our friend group? And I remember you saying nobody asked you how you were doing, and you said it really hurt how taboo your dad was and the death of your dad, because you know, good intended people might not want to bring him up, but you're thinking about him every time you walk out of your bedroom.
Yeah.
And he's not there. And so you're reminded of his loss every time you wake up throughout the day, but none of us ever wanted to ask, tell me like where you're at and what do you miss about your dad? And I remember learning while we were dating, like, wow, I never want to do that again.
Yeah.
I never want to be so uncomfortable or afraid to bring it up that I just go silent. And I learned something in therapy. I had, conflict with a friend, and I asked my therapist, I said, so what should I do? And she said, just talk the talk. So just say exactly what you're thinking. Hey, I feel uncomfortable because I don't want to say the wrong thing. But I know how important your dad was and how important he is to you. So I want to talk about him, and I want to know how you're doing. But I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing. Yeah. And I think it's just that vulnerability of, hey, I'm going to even just tell you every part and word vomit. And we had years of friendship, so I knew you would trust that. So just that concept of talking the talk rather than just staying quiet. Because I think you realize like that silence hurt you so much more.
Yeah.
And I know with grief, it's like every person watching someone grieve doesn't want to say the wrong thing.
Right.
For sure.
It's like you want to be sensitive. Maybe some people don't consider it that way, but I know for me, I'm like, God, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Yeah. I already wrestle with anxiety. Like I don't want to add any more to this. But I think learning from you with your dad helped me just learn about grief when a friend or someone you love loses someone. Yeah. Just tell them how you're feeling and how you want to be there for them.
And I even remember like our first date, we were driving and she was like, I want you to tell me about your dad today. And I was like,
And I should have probably added, if you want to.
and you probably.
I think I was like, okay, now I can ask.
I think you're like, I'm going for it.
Yeah, I think I was a little
and
bold with it.
And you really, I mean, this is why you should marry your best friend, because now she'll bring it up when I don't want to talk about it, but I know I should. And so, there's that book called Your Body Keeps Score.
Yes.
Or Keeps Count. Is it Score?
Keeps the score.
Your body keeps the score. Just about like if you've been through it, your body is going to let you know when you don't want to acknowledge it.
You're absolutely right.
And Deanna has been like, again, my best friend, and just being like, hey, is this actually what's going on today? And then I'm like, it is. And I didn't even know it, but you saw it.
That's funny. Dee often does that. Denette.
This
Dee. That, and I battle with it a lot of times, because for the 2 years, I've really had to take the role of like being the patriarch. I have 2 other boys, have beautiful daughters, like a wife. Like I gotta be strong, right? Because I feel like if I get weak, well, they're like, that'll be the lid. You know what I mean? So Dee's always like, how you feeling today? I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. I feel fine. Why are you asking me? She's like, because everything, I'm just not feeling like you're fine. And I'm like, I'm fine.
Like, I'm not mad.
Yeah. You're mad.
What's happening?
Yeah. And I think it's kind of it's a real misconception.
Right.
Because truly, when you get in somebody's pain,
Yeah.
it's being willing to drop your walls, them drop theirs, and let's navigate this together. From the time you're a little baby, you're taught to pull away from pain. Don't touch the stove. Don't slam your finger in the door. Like, we're taught innately to turn the other way of pain so that we avoid it. Right. So it's not out of the ordinary that now we're 40 years old and pain's there, and oh crap, I don't want to, like, I'm not going to pain. I have my own pain. Like, I run. Right. And I think that's human nature.
Yeah.
But we've just really challenged ourselves, like, as being believers and Christ followers. I mean, he was in people's pain.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to look like Christ, then even in the midst of mine,
Yeah.
I'm going to get in other people's pain.
Yeah.
And I just think as the church as a whole, collectively, Big C church across the world, I just think I think it's a behavior we could get better at.
Yeah.
You know?
That's so good.
I think it's wild when you brought up, what no one wanted to ask him about his dad, right? Because it's just uncomfortable.
Right.
To circle back to that for me, I think when you're walking with someone or next to someone who's going through extreme loss or extreme grief, they are thinking about it constantly.
Right.
If you go to the mall, we're going to go to the mall. When you find, guess what? Last time he went to the mall, he was with his dad. Last time we were on this part of town, we were doing this as a family. Last time we were here, we were eating together. So it's like these moments are always right here. And you're filtering everything through that. And so when someone brings it up, they're like, oh, I don't want to make you think about him. It's done. Yeah. You're constantly there. And so I think I think for us to negate bringing up someone's name in order to protect them, I think we end up doing the opposite because we don't even know any better, you know?
It's the greatest honor. And I love, Deanna, the way you said that. Like, if you want to, and I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I'd love for you to talk about your dad. I'm thinking to myself, that's happened a few times, where people haven't known Logan. They know our story.
Yeah.
And so their first question is, man, I'd really like to. And I think about that, and I'm like, they're probably like, oh, good Lord. I'm like, well, when he was 2, he did this, and he was 3, because the reality is, all I want to do is talk about it. So the fact that you're willing to listen is big, That's just that's a great, I'm gonna adopt that because I love that, in that thought process.
And you guys, I think one of the reasons I look up to y'all so much is that Logan was such a hero to everyone younger and older that you're like, I'm gonna tell his story even if you don't ask. Because you need to hear it.
Yeah.
And so the people that are hesitant are going to hear it. And then the people that ask one-on-one get to hear the details or the stories that not everyone else gets. But it takes a different kind of strength to go, this is a story that I'm going to tell regardless. And you've already done it all over the country. And in a real way, you've done it so much, but it's only been 2 years, and grief and time are so weird. It feels like forever. It feels like no time. But in the best way possible, I feel like it's just getting started in the best way of the way that you're going to spread a good story. And it's his story, and it's y'all's too. And so for me, I didn't want to open up, and I feel like you guys were like, let's not even take time going around the mountain. Like, let's not even try and going around it. Maybe you guys went around it for maybe in thought, you know what I mean? But I feel like you guys chose to go through right away instead of around it. I remember this quote that I didn't like but was true, and it's grief gets paid. And so it's like, it's going to catch up. It's this tax collector. I'm like, it's going to catch up to you somehow, whether you like it or not. But I feel like you guys were like, no need. Like, we're just going to walk through it right away.
I will tell you, it wasn't, man, it's an honor to hear you say that. And I think
I don't know.
Holistically, I go, man, to honor God with our pain, that's what I guess that's what I desired people to see. It was 5 weeks after when I took a platform to talk about our loss. And I actually talked about the heart of a father and how good God is. And I think some of that God gave me that assignment, because I needed to confess what was in the depths of my soul.
He was reminding you.
Yeah, it was just like, hey, I need you to, you've preached this, you've said this, and now you're going to stand and proclaim it. But I'll tell you, Andy, it was 5 weeks after, and there was a man that showed up who had lost his dad 16 years ago and hadn't been back to church. And here I am 5 weeks after losing my son, and he listens to a message on the heart of a father. And I'll never forget him coming over to me and just going, I haven't stepped foot in a church in 16 years. I lost my father, and I've been so mad at God. The fact that you can stand here 5 weeks after and proclaim God's goodness. And I think that was probably a monumental mark for me to go, okay, like, God, I may not like the details of this story, but you're not done with my story.
Right.
And now my story contains the legacy of the gift that you gave me to steward.
Yeah.
Well, now hell better watch out, because now I'll stand on every platform and they're going to hear about a kid who loved Jesus and changed environments. And though I don't like the length of time that I had, God was faithful to his promise to us.
And I think it's that constant balance of both and. Like, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I don't like our story. And I still believe that you're good. I still believe that you're faithful. I still believe in the promise that I'll see him again. Because the end result of the opposite, I'm not capable of going there.
Right.
And God, you've been faithful on the mountaintop, and so I have to believe you're the same God in the valley, and you're not rushing me to climb the mountain. You're fine with me praising you in the valley, saying, hey, I'm really trying here. I'm really trying to honor you. And I don't remember which book it was I read, but one of the authors I read he said, this is the only time we'll be able to honor God with this sacrifice.
Wow.
Like, only in this season of eternity will we be able to offer the sacrifice of pain. And in a weird, maybe dark and twisted way, that gave me some kind of hope. Like, okay, like this is the time that I get to use this, and I hate it, and it sucks, and I would change it 1,000,000 times over. I would take its place 1,000,000 times over, and yet this is our story. And so
Josh Morris of Gateway said a quote that has just resonated with me after hearing it. And he was talking actually about this week, and he was saying, when the people wanted a king, they praised him with palms. Palm Sunday, he comes in the city, they're dropping palms, and he's walking across on a donkey, right? Because they thought, here's the king that we needed to come save us from the Roman Empire.
Right.
But when Jesus gave them what they needed, they returned it with thorns. He wasn't the king that they wanted. He was the king that they needed. And I think for many of us, when our story is exactly like we would draw it up, and it's everything that we would ever desire, man, we praise, and he's the king, and he's on the mountaintop.
Yeah.
But when he's the king that we need, what do I give to him in those moments? And we've just made a determination, that mountaintop or valley, we're going to do the same. Some days are easier.
Yeah.
And we changed perspective. My buddy Tito really challenged me one day because, in grief and loss, and this through your story, like the world moves on. After about the first 4 weeks, they're back to 100 miles an hour, and you're still stuck in the moment, So it's like they're all back on the highway, and you're broke down. And so we're trying to figure it out. And one of our biggest struggles was that every day that we woke up, we were one day farther away. And like every day that we got up again, we were one day further away from our son. And you actually hashtagged it on your post, and it's probably the first time that I've heard you say it. And it meant a lot to me, but like, he challenged me. He's like, man, like the prophet Nathan challenged David when he lost his son to not see this one day further, but one day closer. And the perspective that I've taken over the last few, months and a while now, and it seems like it's grown on you if you put it, is it that every day I wake up, man, I'm one day closer.
Wow.
Which then allows me to go, well, if I'm one day closer, hell better watch out, because today I'm going to live like that. And if I get tomorrow, hell better watch out, because I'm one day closer. And one of these days I'm going to wake up and my cloud of witnesses will have a soldier that I, long to see again. But until then, my task and my assignment is to be a Christ follower that every day makes heaven look different because of the way I did that today.
Yeah.
I mean, we're on, we take anniversary trips and we're on cruise ships. I mean, people they're on their best times of their life.
Yeah.
And they make the mistake of asking, so what's your story? And we're like, well, let us tell you.
Well, glad you asked, But we've met, I mean, we'll never forget the guy that asked us that question. So
Yeah.
tell us your story. I open up, and I mean, he's just in awe. He had just lost his son.
Yeah.
And I'm able to now sit there and minister to this dude, and his friends blown away going, man, thank you so much. Like, he needed, we just have no idea as a society.
Yeah.
And if we would stop and think and look at the people around us and just be willing to ask the right questions, man, God could use you so much every single day. And I'm just not going to bask in my pain. I'm going to go, okay, today, man, I'm one day closer. And I may be a little weaker today, or I may be a little stronger today, but I'm one day closer. And because of that, man, it's going to be a day that I get to make heaven look different.
One thing, though, that I do want to point out that because you said, oh, I think, you're catching on to that one day closer. I think one thing that's been beautiful when it comes to our marriage and grief has been that you haven't pushed that on me. Like, if you've had a strong day, you haven't made me feel guilty that I'm not having a strong day.
It's really good.
Or if our kids aren't having a strong day, we do our best to not make them feel guilty that they're having a down day.
Yeah.
And we're all walking through grief, just as you guys have walked through it. And it's like, I think that's been the most beneficial thing for my soul. And I know we kind of touched on that at the beginning, but you've never said, man, you got to suck it up, or I need you to be this, or no, I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
And so today, that's where I'm at. And so,
Well, whatever's not dealt with, I mean, we said this before, you're going to drag it. Like, it's there.
It'll
So
catch up.
it's going to catch up to you.
and so there's times when, we have had opportunities to speak on our son, and we had one very recently, and I said, today's not the day for me. I'm angry, I'm not there.
Right.
He said, okay, I understand. And it actually turned into an amazingly beautiful moment because he shared it. He said, can I share that vulnerably? I was like, yeah. I was like, because we're talking about today's a bad day. My wife was supposed to speak and she's not capable. And so God gave me the strength to pray over the room like this in vulnerability. And God did what God does, but there's beauty in vulnerability.
Yeah.
There's beauty in transparency because we never know who in that room needs to look at someone else and say, man, God's working in their heart. He can work in mine too, and meet me in my pain,
I think it says a lot about you too, to be aware of how you're doing and not rush yourself to a different place. And notice I didn't say better, because a bad day doesn't mean you have bad emotions. It means you have real emotions that are raw, that need to be, excuse me, paid attention to. Yeah. And so for you to be able to be honest with yourself and your husband, who graciously goes, I got you.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful thing for me to learn so early on in marriage, where you feel like you have to have it together. Or you have to be in a better place, or you're hard on yourself, or you're, wondering, well, why is it a hard day? There's so many internal thoughts that you can have in pain and in suffering and in grief.
Yeah.
And I love that you have taken care of yourself. And I've watched you. I've watched you have very honest conversations and say, no, I can't do that. And it's not defeat. It's actually victory when you are able to stand up for yourself and to really love yourself. And I know that that's like what is it called? Contradicting, or what is the word?
It's controversial.
Controversial. There we go. To say, like, I'm going to love myself, but no, like, if we're meant to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, that means we have to have love for ourselves.
Yeah.
It means we have to care for ourselves and be gracious and gentle. And, the question that I have for you, Dee, I remember early on you had said, I have two choices. I'm going to suffer, or I'm going to suffer well. And I want to know, like, as a mother, as a woman, what are just a few ways that you have found suffering well to help you through the grief and the pain of it all?
I think of, great question.
That's a good one.
I think
I'm glad she asked a woman.
You're next. No.
And Kurt from a man's one.
Yeah.
I think for me, and it really has been both our mantras, but I think there have been no markers. I think no matter what book I read or what podcast I heard or video I watched, because I tried everything, any ounce of hope that another grieving parent could give that
Right.
would show me I might be okay. I think I tried to soak all those in, and those were all really, really helpful. But that game of comparison can be so deadly and so harsh when you're like, man, maybe at this point I'll feel like this, or maybe at this point life will be different. And losing someone dear to you changes everything, and it changes your expectations of everything. And we actually were at a marriage conference where they'd asked us to do a vision assignment, right? Which sounds like a great thing. But when you're asked to give vision for 5 years down the road from now, and you're looking at a future that you didn't expect, that's a hard assignment. And I refused to do it. Honestly, I was like, hell no, I'm not doing that.
Good for you.
The last 6 minutes, it makes sounds like I do a whole lot by myself.
But I care for her. That's what it is.
This might sound really cliche, but it's honestly been like, what's the next right step? And it's literally that simple. And Elizabeth Elliot writes a poem about doing the next right thing when she loses not one, but 2 spouses. And those words just kept, it's crazy how God does things, because like I was 16 years old when I did a play in a Christian school, and I was Elizabeth Elliot.
Wow.
It just comes to me right now as I'm saying that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we've ever even talked about it.
I'll show it to you. It's on a video somewhere. I'm sure my mom has.
Clip it right on
Yeah.
No, I got the content. Clip it. Check out the link
Show
below.
notes.
But at the end of the poem, she talks about doing the next right thing. And it's just like today's next right thing might be getting out of bed, feeding the dogs, taking a shower, checking on my husband and my kids. That might be all I can be capable of doing. Tomorrow, I might be sitting on a podcast talking about the faithfulness of God. And the next day, it might be something totally different. But it's, what is God giving me the strength for today? And if I've ever had to focus on the bread, like daily bread, it has never been more powerful than in this moment.
Yeah, I think that's a very key concept that I don't want to get lost anywhere. Suffering well for us, for me, and for her is knowing where to go when we're suffering. This is not 2 people that hole up in a bedroom and sob and grab a glass of wine and call it a day. In those hard days of grief, for us, there's only one place to turn. And some of those are hard when when you're going through grief, to turn to worship, to turn to God's word, to turn to a sermon or a podcast. But for me, suffering well is going, okay, I'm having a bad day. This is hard. I've got to go to someone who knows more than me, who can give me what I can't give myself. And if I gain one more ounce of truth of who God is in that moment, but then you know what? I suffered well today. And tomorrow I'm going to have the strength to get up and declare what I learned in the quiet today. There's not, it's a very bad, I can't say it's very bad. I would say I would not condone a behavior of you're having a dark grief day. Just go hole up in isolation and quiet and turn to some other vice.
Right.
You leave yourself susceptible to a lot of things. It's finding the balance. I'm not saying go and listen to 19 sermons either. That may not be your thing, but you have to turn to the source of the one person who can give you what you don't have in that moment.
And even in that, we were very different. Sermons and worship were great for him. Worship for me was not good.
Wow.
Worship for me, because I'm such a feeler and an empath, songs that used to resonate with me very well didn't any longer. It's almost like I could feel, and this might sound super spiritual, so forgive me, but it's almost like I could feel the intention of the song and its writing, and I was like, they've never felt that. They shouldn't be singing it. And I don't know if that's judgmental. I don't know if that's, maybe they did, but it's almost like I could discern whether or not that was a heartfelt worship song. And so worship for me became really, really difficult. I'm talking about for the first year and a half. And worship for him was great.
Some songs.
Yeah.
There's some that I can't listen to this day. But
and for me, reading was so feeling. But
and it's not about us. These aren't worship songs aren't for us. So theoretically, you go, that's not even about you. You should be able to worship. But just the thought of the truth behind it.
Yeah.
So
I'm just saying you have to run to, because God created two different individuals, so he speaks to us differently. So it's okay for him to speak to me in something different than he speaks to him. And for me not to push that on him as my spouse. Well, you should listen to this book that I read. Well, I didn't want to listen to that book. It's a moment of giving, it's grace, giving grace for, okay, God's speaking to him. He's speaking to me.
I remember just being, in our bathroom or in our bedroom or in my office and just having worship going because I just needed to soak in it.
Yeah.
And just
you can be real, it's okay.
Just hearing, I'm in it. And my God, turn that off. And I'm like, it's not for you. No, I didn't do that. But
he was so wise in that moment. I'm like, I can't hear that song right now.
And it's like, it's interesting. We're in the same home under the same roof, dealing with the same pain. The thing that fuels me is crushing her.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, in that moment, I could battle well, you need to suck it up. This is worship. Come on, get with the Lord. He's the one,
That wouldn't have gone well.
And it's like, well, hold on. That's not my job.
Yeah.
If I'm the thing that determines how she gets healed and where her joy comes in, if that comes from me,
Wow.
I'm in a position that I ought not be in.
Wow.
She has to turn to the Lord. It may be in word that day. It may be in a testimony. It may be in a miracle. It may be in a song. God's going to determine that out. I don't need to be the one to try to fix her pain.
Yeah.
I got to let God do his job on that.
Yeah.
That's so good.
I just may have to alter the way he's doing it with me at the time.
And it's even a matter of, because a matter of just being open, creation to me has always spoken to me.
Yeah.
And so in moments when I couldn't hear songs and I couldn't hear words, literally walking out for days and days and days and months and months and months and looking at the sky going, God, I need to see a piece of you.
Yeah.
That was the only thing I could offer in my praise that day. Wow. I need a glimpse of you.
Sitting in a hammock, just being like, you want to sit outside? You want to?
The miles that hammock has had this last couple of years.
I don't want to sit outside.
So how has, that's such a, I really wanted to talk about in marriage, how do you navigate space in a healthy way? How have you navigated, in our, really long 1 year?
In 3 days.
In 3 days, and all of our wealth of knowledge. There have been times where we go, hey, I need space. And then there's also been times where either Deanna or I will say, hey, your space time is all done because it's best to come out of that now.
Which normally I'm the one that's 24-hour space, and he's like, what are you doing?
You're like, it's been 5 minutes. Are you done?
Yeah.
And
because I do retreat.
yeah. And I'm probably similar to you. I need to get out. I would get with people. So how have you guys managed? I need to give you space in a healthy way, but also I love you. You're my best friend. I need you to come back.
Yeah.
It's a great question. And I think that length of time and the ability to do that well is determined by what's done in the space.
Okay, yeah.
If hypothetically, hey, I need space, and that means I'm going to run to something to numb pain, we're not going to live in that space long. What we're doing is not healthy, and this isn't beneficial. And so I'm going to come alongside of you, and we need to talk about this.
Yeah.
What's the root of this? What's the seed? If I need space means I go to walk in there and I hear you worshiping or wailing before the Lord or declaring scripture or reading a book in a hammock that's fueling your soul. Well, I implore you to sit in that space for 3 days if you want to,
Yeah.
because that space is the only space you need to be in.
Yeah.
So allowing space is very easy when you know what's being done in that space is repairing your partner and not tearing them down.
Yeah. And I had to work on and learn, like, honestly, when he was asked the first time to speak, I was kind of ticked that he said yes. Because I was like, I couldn't imagine myself doing that. And so I had to, I use that just as an illustration of letting go. But there were things that fueled him that I needed to be able to allow him to do.
Yeah.
That I knew wouldn't have fueled me. And so, although I needed more time to retreat, I needed more space, I also had to give him room to go and do and fill with things, while also encouraging him to make sure that he wasn't doing it as a form to run from his pain.
Good things can be numbing things too.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, that's true. It's like there's nothing sinful about this thing that I'm doing. Like you said, 19 sermons. God's not upset about 19 sermons, but if you can tell that you're trying to cope.
Yeah.
You know, I heard someone say that if you cope incorrectly, you're not just running from pain, but you're also running from healing. And so you're running from both. It's like you're actually doing
The voices over to the left, you know what I mean? They come out of
She's
nowhere.
laughing at Deanna's face. Her face was like, oh, that's a good one.
But it's both.
Wow.
And it's like it's actually the most unproductive thing.
Yeah, I
that you
actually
could do.
really do like that. Like that is very good.
Yeah.
And it is hard when what your productive isn't productive for them.
Yeah.
And you have to go like y'all were saying about worship. That's his productive. That would not be productive for you at all.
Not that in that season.
And that season, it's like, no, why would I do that? And so navigating that, I feel like you guys have had so many years of marriage that you had the strength to go like, let me just wait a second and think this through. It's okay that they're seeing this differently. What about young marriages that experience pain when they feel like, I mean, you guys have had decades of being best friends. How do you navigate space if you're just going through this or never gone through this in marriage? Like, how what's the first thing you need to tell somebody when this happens if they're young in marriage?
Yeah. This has kind of been a banner statement for me too. You're going to choose to be sympathetic or empathetic. Two very different things. Young marrieds going through pain that maybe have not done that before might be able to feel sympathy for their spouse.
Right.
But sympathy for someone is, I feel sorry for you. That, over a period of time, to a selfish person, wears out.
Yeah.
Okay, I no longer feel sorry. We got to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Empathy is not, I feel sorry for you, but I'm going to get in your pain with you. Well, now if I'm in your pain with you, I'm holding your arms up, fueling your soul so that we can get out of this together,
Yeah.
but we may sit here longer than you think.
Yeah.
I'm telling you that, and these guys are gonna, roll me when I get up there. But I have preached like Job had the worst friends on the planet. A message. They said they like curse God and die, and they did. They said all the wrong things.
Yeah.
But them jokers sat in the dirt with a guy who had tore his clothes and they sat right there with him. Said all the wrong things. Wish they had just shut up, but they said all the wrong things.
Yeah.
But they did sit there.
But they showed up.
It's good.
And we can all think about dark times in our life
Yeah.
when we were in the dirt and we looked around and nobody was there. So what I would tell a young married is very early on in a relationship, know the difference of sympathy and empathy.
Yeah.
It's good.
Be willing to hurt with your spouse. The things that trigger pain,
Yeah.
be willing to get in there and feel it with them. All it does is show support. You know, it shows the ability to go, I love you in the midst and in spite of where you're at right now. And I'm willing to get here.
One of the questions that we learned to ask, and we've shared with countless couples over the last 2 years, is to just ask the question, how can I best serve you today? Like, how can I best love you today? Yeah. And it's such an alarming question, because when it's met with a response of, oh, okay, now I know where you are today,
Right.
I know how to answer, especially he keeps saying, you know, our love languages, those first few weeks and months, those are out the window. Words of affirmation, I didn't need to hear I was pretty. I could care less. Quality time, I didn't want to get off the couch. His acts of service and physical touch, do you think we were wanting to be intimate and when you're desperately grieving? And so it's like, how do you love on someone when they're walking through a tragedy or a trauma or a painful situation in their family or tragedy? And it's like, how do I best serve you today? How can I best love you?
And we're 2 years removed now.
I literally asked
And
you
we're asking
today.
the same question.
I was like, how can I love you
How do I
today?
best serve you today?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think what's so powerful is when you said in the beginning was you have to choose to be selfless. That's such a selfless question. My hands down least favorite question when grieving. Actually, it wasn't even a question. People would say, if you need anything, let me know.
Yeah.
So I'm like, first off, what I need is what I lost.
Exactly.
And then let me know you just made me in charge of
Yeah.
communicating to you
So good.
how you can help. And so you have done two things that are out of my control right now.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let you know. And you don't see that what I need isn't here.
So truthful, man.
And so I feel like when you just say, how can I best serve you today? Even the word today
Yeah.
is like, it could be completely different from tomorrow. Today could be like, you can best serve me by just a bowl of cereal.
Yeah.
Or it could be like, you need to serve me by taking me out. I need to go here. Like, I want to go out to eat. And it's like, okay, that's today. Because it could change every day.
And I get all those, like all those. You know?
Today,
And some days it's Sabbath. So like we've also learned in grief how to Sabbath well.
It's good.
Today I need to rest. Like we've
Like
been
I just
going
never
and doing
feel
it.
my soul today. And Sabbath is not something we're good at either.
Yeah.
But in the midst of grief and pain, it's been the Sabbaths that have been the most for us. Wow, today I feel better just because I did nothing but refuel my soul.
Yeah.
So good.
And that was good.
And you guys, even this year in 2024 in March or May, whenever the first half of this year, you're already doing so much.
It's crazy.
Like, and which is a huge blessing. Like, just shout out Broken for Better, how much y'all are doing.
Let's go.
Like,
Cool parents.
Cool parents. I'll text Kurt and he's like, I'm not in Florida for 2 weeks, but we'll figure it out. And I was like, okay.
He'll have his people call your people.
Yeah, exactly.
I do have people.
You do
I
have
do
people.
have
Oh my
people.
gosh.
And your people call me for Andy because he doesn't answer his phone.
Yes, it's true. It's true. I mean, New Year's resolution. I'm getting better.
Oh,
But
we'll see.
we will see. Well, when it comes to when you look at the year, I have a question that I really wanted to ask, something that my family had to navigate. I'm still navigating. And it is good traditions when you grieve. When my dad passed away from cancer at 16, I'm the youngest of 4. And it was 2 weeks before Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And like a couple of days before your sister's birthday.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what's so hard for my sister Joy is it'll always be a couple of days before her birthday now.
Right.
And now that day kind of pulls every day before and after it near itself.
Right.
And you have to rethink, okay, what are we going to do about that? And y'all's approach was always just let's go through and not around. So when it comes to a tradition and a holiday, I feel like when somebody for me, when I lost my dad, it was this many days till Christmas. And what's it going to look like? I'll say that Thanksgiving, horrible.
Yeah.
I barely remember it because like you said, your brain's like, nope.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm grateful. I'm like, it didn't need to. And how did you guys navigate? How do you navigate? This tradition won't change. And then also, this has to change for our benefit.
Let me say this first. I want to honor our families because most traditions around holidays are built around families, mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
And before we answer this question, I want to honor our families because our families did whatever they needed to
Yeah.
create new as well.
Yeah.
That's good.
Wasn't just Kurt and Denette blowing up traditions. I have family members that have blown up traditions so that we can do what we're about to tell you. So I want to honor all of them as we do this.
Yeah, and I think only out of sensitivity for us because we are a family that has been riddled with tradition. Like
Everything.
we celebrate Cinco de Mayo and we're not Hispanic, you know. Like
Well,
we,
Paquito.
we celebrate.
Yes.
I mean, you name it, Flag Day. If there was the Olympics, we were going to have our own Olympics, and so like we did all of those things to build family culture and to build fun.
Yeah.
But like we never, ever, ever imagined what we would walk through. And so when you have all of those memories built around and a whole family, to look at those was very difficult for us. And so I think maybe for you said, I see y'all going through and not around. This one was really hard for us. And we did try desperately to go around. And we've tried to be, this one was one that we had to probably say some hard no's and set boundaries for us because everything obviously had changed, but it's like it's creating new and it's trying to honor the old, but realizing the old will never be. So it's like, how do we create new memories with our beautiful children and all of those things. And before you say what you're about to say, I do want to say that God was so gracious in this one fact. The Christmas before God took Logan, we were starting to get a little tired of our normal traditions, right? The big Christmas, all the trees, all the things. And we had said, we're going to do something different next year. And next year we want to do memories. And so instead of the gifts, we want to do a trip together. We want to do something. And so we had already kind of hashed that out. And so it was like, okay, this year's going to be different. And so it was about restructuring and making new memories. And I think our families as a whole has been, okay, it's not about the things. It's not about the turkey that we used to have. It's not about the this. How do we make a moment that we will always remember, that will always last? Because in the end, that's what really matters. And it's not, oh, I remember you got that, rock'em sock'em, whatever. No, it was that moment that we remember as a family. And so it changed
really good
for us.
Language-wise and in emotion, we'll say then, we do believe God received Logan.
Yes.
Not took Logan. We do believe he received him.
Yeah, that's true.
I think we wrap so much around things that we've always done that many times we miss the things that are to come. So in our traditions that we have so many great memories together as a family. We could either shut up shop and just go, well, we're going to remember everything that was. Yeah. And that's the way we do it. Or we buckle down and we go, God has given us 4 others to steward. We're still married. God's still using us in a crazy way. And so we're going to honor the things of the past and love every moment of it. But we are going to enjoy the things of the future with who we have. And we're going to create new memories. We can go out with our 4 kids and listen. there's not a trip. I mean, she's sitting right here. They're like, there's not a trip that we go on that all 6 of us don't understand the reality we're living.
Right.
Forever there will be a gap in every picture, every trip, everything.
Yeah.
It's not spoken about, it's not said, but we all know.
Yeah.
But we make amazing new memories together. We laugh, we have great times. We don't have to do things of the old. And I think some things that traditionally that we've done for a lot of years have been blown up, and we've loved every moment of it.
And that's been okay.
Yeah.
I think even when like you look at, somebody that wants to live in the glory days of high school, right? And they're like, man, I used to be the best football player ever. And you're like, dude, you're 50.
It was
Like,
baseball. It was baseball. You want to talk about it?
But
So
I'm
when I
saying,
was a
like,
junior,
what I'm saying
First
is,
50?
not yet. But we all know like those guys, right? Or those women or whatever. And it's like, there's sometimes it's okay to say, okay, we need to relook at the things that we relive every day. And like,
Yeah.
maybe this is a moment, and man, we hate change. God, I hate change. Like I hate it with every fiber of my being, but I think traditions, when you're talking about grief and loss, it's a great time to relook at things and say, is this best benefiting everyone in this moment? Or are we sitting in a position where we continually are trying to stuff ourselves in the same tradition that no longer suits all of our needs?
a perfect example of this is a great question. We haven't even mentioned this other than talking about the question. Everything serves a purpose. So our traditions, though we look at it and go, wow, we made amazing memories. 2 weeks ago, Logan's best friend asked Denette, hey, we ought to do one of those family nights again. I loved when I used to come over and do those family nights. Now, the reality is we'll probably never do another night like that.
Like that, yeah.
But what I can assure you is there is one young man that when he has a family, he will do tradition nights. So what we did as a family in cultivating memories potentially has the ability to change an entire another man's family. That tradition served an amazing purpose, but we don't have to ever do it again.
We
We're
don't
gonna-
have to say never, We have to walk through what God.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe we do another.
And one thing that I'll say, because, Deanna and I have such a huge benefit of knowing Logan and how unexpected he could be in some of the funniest ways and some of the, like, fashion-driven choices he would choose. Like, I remember, because, being able to do youth ministry with him, I could never be like, let's do this event that we did last year the same way. He'd be like, no, that's lame. Or he'd just, even like a Wednesday night youth service, he'd be like, is this it? Like, we're just going to do this every week? Like, people are getting saved. And he's like, yeah, I know, but can't we do it in a more, like, fun, cool way? Like, he'd never let me settle on anything. And it always challenged me. And even, like, the funny stuff. Like, I'd see him wear stripes and camo. And I'm like, you did that. Like, you either got dressed in the dark or you just chose it.
that was
I think he chose it. Yeah.
That
And
was
so
intentional.
even with like tradition for him, in a way, I'm like, I think you guys are honoring it by being like, what can we do that's fresh and new?
We never looked at it like that. But yeah.
Because for me, he never let me just do the same thing normal
Yeah.
again and again.
Like, just continue being my friend.
Oh yeah, Logan is a big part of our story. I mean, I would take him with me to dinners with all of our young adult college friends, and he would just want to be there.
And one in particular.
Yeah, so okay, I am going to share this story. One in particular, it was all guys, and it was all of our guy friends. I didn't know one of my friends invited Deanna. And Deanna was like, hey, I heard y'all are doing something after church. And I was like, yeah, we're doing something.
And our friend was like, yeah, it's totally cool that you come. We're just going to go to Mellow Mushroom.
I'm like, this is a guy's dinner. It's all guys. And I don't want the one girl that I like, that I am figuring stuff out with, that I'm not asking out yet. But also definitely no one else can ask her out yet. Yeah, I'm like, she can't just be at the dinner with all these other single guys. And so Logan was just with me that night. I was like, I'll take him home. And so we get there, and I literally made sure that like my most single guy friends were the furthest away from Deanna at the table, and I put Logan across from Deanna. I was like, you guys will get along. I'm like, Logan, you can talk to Deanna all you want tonight. And then I kid you not, seeing the way she talked to him and made him so joyful. And I remember he was just going through a season of he was just like melancholy. Yeah. And Deanna just lit him up with laughter. And they were just best friends that whole night. And I remember saying to myself, I was like, Deanna, if Deanna is a part of my future, I already know that students are. And so I get to see two parts of my future interact. Students and my wife. Now, at the time, I hadn't even asked her out yet. Yeah. But I was, like, tripping. I was like, I made a mistake putting these two together. It's like, God just confirmed a huge thing for me. I was like, for one, I'm passionate about students. Two, I think that's my wife. And so I get in the car, and he's like, you're tripping, bro. I can't believe you haven't asked this girl out yet. And I was like...
Hey, he's like,
he was
if
my
you
wingman.
don't, you better watch out.
I was like, whoa,
I'm Mr. Skinny Girl.
15 or 16.
I know.
No way.
And so, and I just remember him. I'm like, this kid is challenging me right now because he's like, what's wrong? Like, just go for it. And so he just never let me settle into being comfortable with something if he knew there was more. And so even with y'all and traditions and stories, I'm like, it's very like him to just go left or be like, let's just do something completely different.
I like that phrase you said, never settle.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna adopt that.
I think we're going to, yeah, we've been going a minute. And I feel like we could sit here and talk about somebody we loved for hours. Yeah. So I think for us, I'm going to end on the statement.
I want to interject real quick.
Well, babe, we're going to end on this one.
I feel led, and it's kind of a story, and I know you're ready to end, but I feel led to ask you.
No, I'm not ready to end. I could talk here all night.
But I feel like we need to bring it back to, obviously, I'm so thankful you shared that story. I'm so thankful just for all the laughs and the memories, and I can't wait till we get to have all that again together. But you did share about how strong you had to be for our family, and you were that for me. And I just want to give honor to God because I feel like he was so gracious in a very, very, very important and pivotal moment for you. And in a moment when you said, like, how do you know when you let go and when you hold on? And in a moment when he needed to retreat, God opened the door for this amazing retreat for him to go on. And he got to hear directly from the Lord in this God-sized encounter. And I just think that it's important. I feel like you're supposed to share this story because I feel like it's when you least expect it, and sometimes it's in those moments. And for anybody that needs hope, that I know that in that moment you needed it. I think it's constantly that reminder of that open door of him meeting you right where you are, even when you needed the absolute most.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. I
know.
I'm
Sorry.
that.
I'm sorry.
I went on a retreat in South Carolina, just myself. Really crazy how it all came about, but flew up there and it was all by myself and with some other pastors. And there was one moment that Greg Surratt, who was running the retreat, he runs a huge church, up there. And he and I were sitting at a picnic table together. And he just said, he was talking about this book that he was writing. And he said, it's an exercise that we do. And so I'm just eating it up, I'm like, oh, what's the exercise? Can I do it? He's like, yeah, we could do it. He's like, close your eyes. I close your eyes. He's like, I just want you to picture your surroundings. You're sitting on a chair in a hallway. There's a door in front of you. I'm like, okay. He said, what's the chair like? I'm like, well, it's like kind of a steel chair. It has 4 legs, it's kind of cold. what door are you looking at? And I was proud. I'm like, oh, it's beautiful. It's a wood oak door, big iron handles. It's ornate. He says, it heavy? I'm like, oh, so heavy. He said, nah, I want you to get up and open the door. And so I'm like, okay, see yourself doing it? And he's like, what was it? I was like, really struggled. Like it was hard. Okay, now you're looking into the room. What do you see? Like, well, it's dark. It's candles lit in the corners, so there's a vague light. He said, okay, now you see Jesus. He's in the room. Where is he? And I said, oh, he's at the far corner. It's okay. I want you to go in the room and place yourself in the room. And I went in and I placed myself in the front opposite corner. And he began to talk through the exercise of what I had locked up in my heart and what me going to the Father was like. And that God had brought me to this retreat to tell me he never desired a big, heavy door. He's always in the center of a room, always standing with arms wide open, desiring me to run in. Heavenly lights, heaven. And it made me realize that even though I'm at a church retreat, there to, hear from the Lord, God was revealing the depths of my soul that I was distant and I was having a hard time. And this is coming from the place of what she's saying is I had gone 2 years feeling like I need to be strong, I need to be strong, I need to be strong. And what God was showing was you don't need to be strong. I will be strong, but you have to let me be the father that I need to be. I mean, it owned me. That happened day 2. Like the whole rest of the retreat, I was free as a bird. God was faithful enough to do that in the moment. So this is what's even crazier.
Yeah, the better part
This
of
is
the story.
nuts. I leave this moment and I'm wrecked. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I cannot believe how. About 30 minutes later, this guy calls me, Schaer, and it's a guy from,
Carnegie?
Dale
Dale
Carnegie speaking. And they bring him in. He sits with pastors and he evaluates a sermon. Well, at the time, I'm not a preacher, but I still signed up because I'm like, if I can get better at communicating, I'm about it,
Yeah.
So I go in the room and he's like, okay, show me a sermon. I'm like, oh, I don't have a sermon. I just, I worked at churches. And so I was kind of here to get tips. He's like, you never preached? I'm like, well, yeah, I preached. He goes, well, let's pull it up on YouTube. There'll be something there. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, this is going to be real embarrassing if there's not. YouTube, Schaer. And boom, immediately a sermon pops up. And I'm like, oh, here's a sermon. So I'm like, oh, okay, let's play it. Bink. And I start playing it. And very quickly, I remember what the sermon was. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And there was a sermon that I preached at a church. And I had them set up a door and set up my office on platform. And I had put chairs on one side of the door and chairs on the other. And I talked about how my employees at the time, when the door was shut, they had no access. They had to wait until I was done with what was there. Now, mind you, listen, I'm just coming off 30 minutes ago being told God desires a light door. And now I'm watching this message of I've built a door on platform and the door is shut. And I had one of my employees was sitting outside while I was meeting with one on the inside. And I said, so these employees, because they see me as a boss, they honor the door. But there are people in my life that the door cannot stop them. And in that moment of that Sunday, Logan was my illustration. So I'm sitting at this retreat and Logan comes busting through the door and he's like, what up, Dad? And I'm like, I'm a mess. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he comes in, we dap, he hugs me. He's like, you in the meeting? Listen, I'll be waiting over there. And he walks right out. And I sat there going, this whole week is for God to show me all he wants me to know is that I have access to the Father. I don't have to stay secluded. I don't have to stay accessed. Man, it's an open light door that he just desires to be with me. And the fact that 5 years ago I preached a message and I believe God was gracious enough in that moment to bring this message and for me to see my son. It's all like to hear his voice is like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that. You know what I mean?
But the heart of the Father that's so gracious to have laid on your heart
Yeah.
a message that you would need to rehear.
Hear myself preach
From
with my
yourself.
son is like, I was just
Just
mind
like,
blown.
right after that that God encounter. And so I felt like I wanted you to share that because it's when you least expect it. And it's in those moments when you just say, God, I don't know why I'm walking through this door, but I'm just trying to be faithful to honor you.
No.
That he shows up. And it doesn't make the pain easier, but it lets you be seen by a God that is saying, your son's right over here. He's just a little further ahead. He's waiting on you.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
line of I'll just wait right out there. It was
Yeah.
like that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's waiting right up there. He's just you know.
Sorry, I wanted you to share that, but
Yeah. Yeah. But no, I like and now I've watched now that's a little clip that I can go on YouTube and I've watched it more than I ought to have, but it's just it's fun to so listen, we love you guys. I know podcasts could be a whole lot easier and a whole lot lighter. We could have talked about a lot more other things. But I appreciate you being willing and vulnerable to get into your trauma and your loss, to be willing to help us navigate ours.
yes.
All of us only do this so that somebody might learn a tool that they gain if they hit their darkest moment.
Yeah.
So we hope that's what this has been for you. Thank you for hanging out this whole time with us. We look forward to seeing next time as we balance life together.
Once again, we want to say thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Our true desire is this has brought value to you, your marriage, and or your family. The fact is, we can't do what we do without the support of you. By your liking, subscribing, and sharing this content, it reaches to those that are beyond our reach. Also, we would encourage you, check out our website, brokenforbetter.com. Become a monthly supporter because by you supporting us, you too are making a difference in marriages.
We want to stay connected with you. So follow us on all the different social media platforms at Broken for Better, because on those different platforms, we're going to be giving tools, we're going to have events, all the different ways that we can stay connected, and we want to be connected.
One of the terms that we've adopted is if your marriage will visit a fitness center, you too can avoid a trauma center. We truly believe in marriage coaching. It doesn't matter what season of life you're in, whether your marriage is a 10 or whether your marriage is a 1. We offer marriage coaching to take it to another level.
Thank you for joining us.